The emergency room buzzed with its usual chaos, crying children, worried parents, the rhythmic beeping of monitors creating a symphony of urgency. Sarah moved through it all with practiced grace, her sneakers squeaking against the linoleum as she checked vitals, administered medications, and offered reassuring smiles to frightened patients. To everyone at St. Mary's Hospital, she was simply Sarah Chen, the quiet night shift nurse who always volunteered for the hardest cases and never complained about working holidays. What they didn't know was that 5 years ago, Sarah had been someone entirely different. It was 2 in the morning when the automatic doors slid open, and 3 people in dark suits walked in with a kind of purposeful stride that made the security guard straighten his posture. The tallest one, a woman with steel gray hair, approached the reception desk and flashed a badge. FBI, we're looking for Captain Rebecca Hayes. The young receptionist blinked in confusion. I'm sorry, there's no one here by that name. Are you sure you have the right hospital? Sarah's hands froze over the force she was adjusting. That name, that life, she had buried it so deep she sometimes forgot it had ever existed. The lead agent's eyes scanned the room and locked onto Sarah. Recognition flickered across her face. Nurse Chen, we need to speak with you now. Sarah's patient, an elderly man recovering from a minor heart episode, looked up at her with concern. She squeezed his hand gently. I'll be right back, Mr. Patterson. Everything's going to be fine, but her voice wavered slightly, betraying the storm brewing inside her. In the small conference room surrounded by the 3 agents, Sarah felt the weight of her past pressing down on her shoulders. Agent Morrison, the woman who had called her by her old rank, slid a photograph across the table. It showed a young military pilot in full-dressed uniform, medals gleaming, eyes sharp and determined. Sarah barely recognized herself. Captain Hayes, Morrison began, her voice softer than expected. There's been a situation. Flight 227 has been hijacked over the Pacific. The terrorists have disabled the pilots. There are 347 people on that plane, including a kindergarten class returning from a cultural exchange program in Tokyo. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. I don't do that anymore. I can't. You're the only combat pilot within range with experience in that specific aircraft model who is also trained in hostage negotiation. The plane will run out of fuel in 4 hours. We have a military transport ready to take you to the intercept point. Sarah stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You don't understand. I left because I couldn't handle it anymore. The missions, the responsibility, the lives weighing on every decision. I became a nurse to save people one at a time, in ways I could see and touch and measure. Morrison stood too, her eyes meeting Sarah's with unexpected empathy. I know what happened in Kabul. I know about the mission that went wrong, about the impossible choice you had to make. But Captain Hayes, those children on that plane, they need the person you were. They need your courage. Sarah closed her eyes, and suddenly she was back in that cockpit, watching 2 paths diverge before her, both leading to tragedy, forced to choose who would live and who would die. The weight of that decision had crushed her, driven her to walk away from everything she'd known. But then she thought of Mr. Patterson in his hospital bed, trusting her completely. She thought of every patient she'd cared for, every hand she'd held, every life she'd touched in these 5 years of healing. She hadn't been running away from who she was. She'd been learning what it truly meant to serve. The transport leaves in 20 minutes, Morrison said quietly. Sarah took a deep breath and nodded. I need to finish my shift report and brief the incoming nurse. Give me 15. She walked back into the emergency room, and for a moment, she saw it differently, not as her hiding place, but as her training ground. Every emergency had taught her to stay calm under pressure. Every critical patient had reminded her that impossible choices were sometimes necessary. Every life saved had rebuilt the confidence that Kabul had shattered. Sarah finished her reports, hugged her confused colleagues, and walked out into the pre-dawn darkness. As the transport jet screamed toward the Pacific, she wasn't running from Captain Rebecca Hayes anymore. She was finally whole, both the warrior who could make hard decisions and the healer who understood the precious weight of every single life. 4 hours later, Flight 227 landed safely. 347 people walked off that plane, including 23 kindergartners who would never know the name of the nurse-turned-pilot who'd brought them home.